following is a presentation of Learfield IMG College. From the Georgia Southern Sports Network, powered by Learfield IMG College.
Wings up, Eagle Nation! Touchdown, Georgia Southern!
This is Inside Eagle Nation, your all-access look into Eagle athletics.
Taking a look through all the other action in Georgia Southern athletics this past week. A lot of road action. A lot of teams hitting the old I-16 out of town.
Getting on the steel horse and taking us to parts north, south, west, wherever. Can't really go too much farther east.
Now let's return to the Learfield IMG College studios. Here are your hosts, Colin Lacy and Danny Reed.
That's a fact, Jack.
Another Monday. It's another edition of Inside Eagle Nation, your all-access look inside Georgia Southern athletics and official podcasts of Georgia Southern athletics as well. Colin Lacy alongside the voice of the Eagles, Danny Reed. We're counting down the days until September 3rd when boot meets ball for Georgia Southern. Coming up less than a month.
Yeah, 19 days now.
Wow.
And we had a lot happen in a week.
Yeah, no joke.
We had school start.
Yeah.
We had
last Wednesday.
Donors Weekend, which kind of changed on the fly because of some bad weather. Had the football scrimmage as part of Fan Fest on Saturday. And then today was the team getting back out on the field. They took it really light after what was an encouraging scrimmage on Saturday, but this was our first athletic department meeting of the 22 calendar, which we'll do those early on in each month, going through all the way until the month of May in 23. But that is our signal that things have started. Now, we think we've said that a number of times already with Media Day, with fall camp, with the first day of full pads. Now, there's a lot of firsts with first day of school, so it has definitely been a flurry of activity ever since last Monday.
You and I were talking in the all-staff meeting earlier today that it's almost kind of like syllabus day in class because everybody is there. When you get deeper into the season, it's always some team is out of town on that day, and so they're zooming in, but it was a packed team room in the FOC.
It felt like a freshman class because there were so many new people, and that wasn't even including all of the new football coaches, which they've been here since January, February for the most part, but just an illustration of the kind of people that are being brought in, a number of different departments. Athletic training is having some turnover. Sports nutrition is having some turnover. Of course, strength and conditioning seems to be having a good bit of turnover, but those are all vitally important areas as we try to make the move into the future.
We'll get it going on this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation. A couple of sports getting in action this past week, going into the regular season that starts this week coming up for women's soccer specifically. But you can get your questions into this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation. You can text us at 912-274-3607. Tweet at GS Sports Network. You would think by now I would have that down. Or you can comment here on Facebook Live or email us at gssnbooth@gmail.com.
By the way, before we launch into this, more than enough support I got on Friday night at what became the impromptu baseball gathering since there wasn't a home run derby. There was a lot of support that chocolate pie is not a pie.
Man. See, everybody I've heard said that too.
Now,
why all the hate on chocolate pie?
Look, now, Darylyn's mom, Tina, did try to tell me, and I think I've had this before, there is a different chocolate pie where you can not necessarily get the chocolate pudding idea, which isn't a pie, which is what I was talking about last week, but there's a different way that you can concoct the chocolate, put it in the crust, so it almost feels like it's got that thicker kind of filling. Now, that I'd at least be willing to talk about with some powdered sugar on the top. It's almost like a chocolate mousse or a heavy chocolate cream. I think we've seen those in hotels and maybe some press boxes before, but as far as if we're talking about strictly chocolate pudding, that's like saying lemon pie. You need to have different kind of filling because lemon pudding inside of a pie crust, that's not really pie either. But anyway, a lot of support for the not chocolate pie front.
Come on, my chocolate pie people. I don't know how many of you there are out there.
Josh, Bob, you guys are great Eagles. And don't let anybody tell you different.
Bob's already chimed in. He said, absolutely, Danny, in all caps.
That's my guy, man.
Man. I'm losing. I'm an uphill battle at this point. Yikes.
That could have gone in a number of different ways on Friday when you lose the home run derby element of a home run derby. But to be able within a couple of hours to rally everybody that had already paid to be a part of it, to tell everybody, hey, we have to go to Bishop. We're going to get a chance to hear from Victor Roach, Aaron Mizell, and Sean Payne, and be able to hear them tell their stories. Rodney Henn and Mike Tiddick was there, so the two of them got up on stage. They talked for a good 20, 25 minutes, and I think we could have had them all night with them being practically best friends for the last 30 years. But a huge credit to Stephanie Roberts and everybody over at the Irk Russell Fund for being able to truly make lemonade out of the lemons that we got out of Friday.
But it's not pie. By the way, Daryl Lynn says, hashtag Team Chocolate Pie. So you're a house divided. Need one of those license plates on the front.
Is there a house divided license plate?
You haven't seen those?
That seems like too many letters.
No, they've got like the house divided and it's broken down the middle and it's like two different teams.
Okay.
Yeah. You need one of those. Okay. One that says pie, one that says no pie.
You're not going to go wrong with dessert, though.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you call it, it's good.
Especially when you're talking about us, we could get Frank, Russ, and Terry involved with this.
That's a good point. We need to get Frank's take on this.
And then he'll really, that's him just being Frank.
Yeah.
You think he's going to answer?
We'll find out.
Because usually he'd be on the air, but since he shifted responsibilities to that news business, he might be asleep.
I was about to say, it might be nap time for him because he has to get there like 3 o'clock.
I know he likes those chocolate pies. I don't like that phrase, but I'm going to use them because that's what it says on the package. I know that he likes those, but I just wonder where he stands on all that. He's a big donut guy.
Yeah, he is. Big sausage roll guy, too.
It's not fall camp unless Frank's walking in with a dozen sausage rolls.
No doubt.
I don't blame him, though.
Anyway, we'll dive into this week in Georgia Southern athletics after we get after this pie nonsense. But Georgia Southern men's golf has a new Eagle helping lead the way. New assistant coach for men's golf, Daniel Castles. Somebody that's got a cool story and a cool background, has spent time as an assistant coach at a couple of different stops, but the last couple of years, he was a pro caddy for the Corn Ferry Tour.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
That's somebody we've got to get on because I guarantee you, as a pro caddy, you've got some stories.
For sure.
That's like with baseball, you always go to the grounds crew. They've got stories. Promise.
Athletic trainers have stories.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Equipment rooms.
Well,
have
athletic
stories.
trainers most of the time can't tell you the stories.
You got to get the right situation.
But a new Eagle in the nest as Daniel Castles, new assistant coach for Georgia Southern men's golf under head coach Carter Collins.
Saw Carter this morning at the athletic staff meeting. He was all fired up about that.
Yep. Georgia Southern women's soccer finished up the exhibition schedule with a 3-0 victory over Charleston Southern back on Saturday at Eagle Field in Irk Park. They will open up the regular season on Thursday at Georgia up in Athens. You can see it on SEC Network Plus. That's a 6 o'clock kickoff from Athens, and then they will open it up at home against UAB on Sunday over at Eagle Field in Irk Park. That's a 1 o'clock kickoff on ESPN Plus.
Excited to see how they do in year 2. Because a lot of times when you have so much success in your first year, you almost feel like and I know this is going to be more of a football term, but it can be apropos to soccer, you feel like you outkick what you can do. But when you set that high of a standard, I like that because it gives you a chance to show maybe you could do even more than you thought. There's not a build-up to, okay, this is how we do things in year 1, year 2 a little better, year 3 is typically where you make the most progress. But to see what he was able to do in terms of the transfer portal, getting to the championship game in year 1, those are lofty goals to try to exceed. But having Ellis back, having Sade back, having Alad back, have a chance to have an even better 22-23.
Flipping to the Georgia Southern men's soccer side, we talked about it last week with the women's soccer preseason polls coming out. Sunbelt announcing the men's soccer poll, and it just sounds good to say Sunbelt men's soccer again.
9 teams.
You got 9 teams. West Virginia atop the preseason poll with 5 of the first place votes. And a lot of times when these polls come out, there's a definite favorite, but you've got 5 first place votes for West Virginia, 3 for Marshall, 1 for Kentucky, and then those are 1, 2, 3 in the preseason poll. South Carolina in 4th place, Coastal Carolina and James Madison tying for 5th, Georgia State in 7th, Old Dominion in 8th, and then Georgia Southern picked 9th in the preseason polls, and I guarantee you that lights a fire under John Murphy and company.
That reminds me of the way we talked about women's soccer last year because of how low they got picked, and we sat in these same chairs and said there is no way they're going to be that low by the time the season's over with. They end up playing against South Al for the championship. But to show you how strong men's soccer in this league is now, the first 4 teams all new.
Yeah.
Marshall, 2 years removed from winning a national championship. Don't bank on Georgia Southern being there when this season ends because there's way too much positivity in that program, and John Murphy has a lot to do with that.
And I think you're going to look up and down Sun Belt Conference men's soccer and see a lot of parity. You look at Kentucky, only 1 first-place vote. They are preseason 3rd in the league. They had both the offensive and defensive player of the year in the preseason. So you're going to see a lot of shuffling, a lot of jockeying in that Sun Belt Conference standings. But a couple of exhibition games this past weekend, and John Murphy thinks outside the box. We know that.
Box, soccer.
There you go. But they had the blue-white game postponed last Tuesday because of rain, and then they scrimmaged Georgia Southwestern and Winthrop in the same day.
Mm-hmm.
Split the squad up. One part scrimmaged Georgia Southwestern in the afternoon, then Winthrop in the evening with the other squad. Both of them tied 2-2 against Georgia Southwestern and Winthrop. They have 2 more exhibitions coming up on Friday. Same thing, split squad, almost like a spring training type deal in baseball. Split squad with Truett McConnell at 2 o'clock, 7 o'clock kickoff against North Georgia. Both of those away. Truett McConnell and North Georgia pretty much in the same area, North Georgia Mountains. But those will come up this coming Friday. Georgia Southern Volleyball will have the blue and white scrimmage coming up on Saturday inside Hander Fieldhouse before they host the Bash in the Borough tournament the following weekend to open up the 2022 season for Chad Willison squad.
And that's going to be part of a packed weekend, at least on Saturday, with the Savannah Fan Fest being called the preseason showcase, with the second scrimmage taking place at Memorial Stadium, one of the first original homes for Georgia Southern football, and the kids clinic following after. So if you get a chance to do that and then hustle back to Statesboro, you can pack your day.
Whew. You got to really book it a little bit.
And then you got to figure out what you're going to eat.
Not a chocolate pie.
Not a lemon chocolate pie. No.
Lemon chocolate pie. Good.
Lemon pie.
If you combine the two, is it enough to make it a pie?
I don't know that I'd want that one.
Yeah, that's true. Then it's not good, but is it a pie?
That might be overloaded in a bad way.
True. I was talking to JT Crabtree and Joe McNulty, and they were talking about some weird ballpark food on the baseball side. And apparently somebody had made a barbecue sandwich with a Reese's cup on it.
You see that last week?
That just sounds awful. Like, I love them both apart. But you put those together, and that does not sound like a good day at the ballpark.
Okay, for a number of years, we had a chance to travel to Charleston to play the Citadel at Riley Park, one of my former homes.
Right.
The River Dogs have long been known for some of the more unique food offerings in all of minor league baseball. I think this goes back about 10 years. They offered beer milkshakes.
Ugh.
The way that they did them, so Russ would be all over this. Craft style beer, different flavors.
Oh, Brian Johnson would be in for it.
Mixed with your favorite ice cream. So those have been in for a long time.
Did you ever do a challenge in Charleston? I know you did a couple of
not at the
eating challenges.
Not at the stadium. The other item, I'll get to the challenge in a minute. The other item.
Is it an item?
It's an item. It's called a pickle dog. They would hollow out half of a dill pickle, put a hot dog and coleslaw in it.
Oh.
That's a little bit older. It's actually a lot better than it sounds.
Gross.
Brant Freeman would not touch that with a 100-foot pole because he's anti-pickles all the way.
I'm with you, Brant.
But those are the two that really stick out in terms of weird food offerings. I don't know that they had ever done a pulled pork Reese's Cup sandwich offering, but
what were the two? You did a apple dumpling turnover thing in a helmet?
That was in 2015. That was my last series with Bowling Green in Fort Wayne, Indiana, because they have this kiosk in the concourse called the Apple Cart, because Fort Wayne, it's where Johnny Appleseed passed away, spent a lot of his life there. their main offering is this.
Aren't they the tin caps?
They're the tin caps. This full-sized batting helmet with apple dumplings, vanilla ice cream, cherries. It's about 5 pounds.
Good grief.
27 minutes before the first pitch.
You did it in 27 minutes?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Is there like a time limit, or is it just, hey, go eat this?
Just to see if you could finish it. And that was because I had the burger earlier in the season in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Oh, those were the same season?
Same season, yeah.
Wow.
So
well,
I did.
Guess you were only Bowling Green one season.
And the reason why I wanted to do the burger, because the original Man vs. Food with Adam Richmond, who came to Charleston with the River Dogs, he did a special there back in 2009 when he was doing a minor league tour. One of the other stops was in Grand Rapids, West Michigan Whitecaps, for their Fifth Third burger, because it's the Fifth Third ballpark. They put this in a large pizza box, and it's got nacho cheese, broken up nacho chips, burger, salsa, sour cream. Oh. The thing that he did was he started at the 7th inning stretch and had to finish it by the final out, which he barely did.
It's going to be tough if that's a quick 1, 2, 3 inning or two.
It almost was. They tried to ham it up where he had one bite left. The last pitch of the game got fouled away. He finished it. The next pitch was the strikeout, so that ended the game. But I did it early in the season. It was sometime in May that year. In 18 minutes, and I'm in the Hall of Fame.
And
I'm the only visiting broadcaster that's done it, at least to that point.
Wow.
I'm in the Hall of Fame now.
How big was the burger?
It was at least 5 pounds. I don't know what the...
Just 5 pound meat?
No, this was everything together.
I was about to say, good Lord.
I'd show you a picture, but I don't think it would translate really well on our cameras here.
We'll get there. All right.
So that was...
How do we get on this tangent?
Weird ballpark foods.
Okay.
Because you and Joe and JT were talking about the pulled pork and the Reese's.
Joe McNulty has a uncanny ability to pick out ballpark foods that are odd, but he can also tell you where it's at in the ballpark.
Is this MLB, MILB, or anywhere?
Major League Baseball that we know of.
Okay.
Like he's rattling off on a separate podcast we do. He was rattling off, you can get bacon on a stick at section 112 in St. Louis. I'm like, what? Anyway.
But hey, everybody needs a guy.
Right? He's the guy.
If you go to Truist Park, you've never been there, you want to know where the quirky food is, Joe, tell me.
Yeah. Tell me, Joe.
Hank Aaron Terrace, what can I get?
Yeah, exactly.
Chop House, what am I getting?
He's got you covered. Again, we said it last week. There's no telling what you're going to get on a episode of Inside Eagle Nation. Always going to get to food somehow. But we get back to Georgia Southern football. A couple of news notes coming out earlier on last week. Going to have a concert series.
That's right.
A lot like Georgia Southern had last year at the concert stage just outside Paulson Stadium in the tailgate lot. But Dylan Marlowe going to kick it off Friday night, 7 o'clock. On September the 2nd, as you lead into the home opener for Georgia Southern against Morgan State. Friday the 2nd, 7 p.m., Dylan Marlowe, Statesboro's own. He is back in the borough to rock it out for Georgia Southern on Friday night.
The cars, the RVs are filing their way into the new look Alan Paulson tailgate lot. Get a chance to be entertained by Dylan Marlowe.
How about that?
That's going to be very nice.
I'm in. Amari Jones was named to the 10th annual Earl Campbell Tyler Rose Award watch list. One of 63 players that was announced at the 16th annual East Texas Kickoff Luncheon. And this is an award that goes out to anybody from the state of Texas, born in the state of Texas. And it's not just what you do on the field, encompasses kind of the whole life of a student athlete.
Another award I think he's going to be up for if he has the kind of season that he showed in the scrimmage on Saturday. He's going to be up for the Horning Award, too, which is the best all-purpose player. We know that Wesley Kennedy was up for that a number of years ago. But if Amari plays the way he has in camp / what he showed when he touched the football on Saturday, you're also going to see him up for the Horning Award at some point.
You talked a little bit about Donors Weekend this past weekend. Friday was supposed to be the Home Run Derby, but Stephanie Roberts did a fantastic job of pivoting into more of almost an evening with the All-Stars type feel. You had, like you mentioned, Rodney Hennon, Mike Tiddick come up, and when those two get going on stories, you're not going to stop them, and you don't want to. But you had Victor Roach, Sean Payne, Aaron Mizell, three of the hardest hitters for Georgia Southern in recent memory. But
3 guys that all played professionally, 3 guys that all participated in NCAA regionals, And the fact that was really the first baseball-centered gathering since the regionals, since hosting a regional, it almost worked out the way maybe it should have in the first place. Now, look, the home run derby would have been awesome to watch Victor Roach try to go the other way and hit it over the monster, watch Aaron Mizell try to do the same thing that he did at Troy in the home run derby 7 years ago. But to have the three of them back in town and be able to share those stories, Payne and Victor were teammates in that 2011 season where Victor went crazy. He had a home run, seemed like every time he was at the plate. Mizell goes double-digit home runs in each of his 2 years. In 14 and 15 was on the regional team that went to Tallahassee. But to hear the experiences of those guys and for them to also highlight how important it was going to be for Eagle Nation to support going forward, because we've undoubtedly seen that this program has momentum now. Yeah. You win 41 games, you host a regional. The whole event was to benefit the upcoming expansion, the facilities project, which the renderings are still being worked out. They're going to be shared sometime in the next few weeks and months about the true direction of Eagle baseball. But to hear the three of them, after they wowed crowds for so many years, to come back and tell fans just how important it was, their support, their money, just being there, how much more important it's going to be to try to keep Georgia Southern where it is with what they just did. And
you think of somebody like an Aaron Mizell, he was only in Statesboro for 2 years, junior college, and I had known him before he got to Statesboro because of the summer league I worked in, he played in. And so getting to know him before, then he coming to Statesboro and seeing what kind of impact just in 2 years Georgia Southern had on him, that's somebody that you really put a lot of stock in what they say, because he's not somebody that had 4 or 5 years here in Statesboro. It was 2 years, but it's as impactful as if he was here for 4 or 5.
And he spoke like somebody that's got a lot of heart for this program because he's from McRae, Telfair County High School, which is barely over an hour away from here. So when he's speaking about this program, even though he only spent 2 seasons, he is this program.
Yeah.
What he did here in those 2 years, he is this program.
For sure. It moved on to Saturday when you had a little golf in the morning. Did you go out golfing?
I did not. I didn't want to embarrass everybody.
Okay.
My putting is just...
That's what you could have done. Just sat on the green and putt. They have, some of these golf tournaments have longest drive. You could do best putting.
I'll have to bring that up to Eric.
Write that down. But then Saturday night was the first scrimmage in the preseason practice for Georgia Southern football. It's odd to say you're just over a weekend and it's not camp anymore, but
that's what you get when you start school on August the 10th. But
preseason practices coming out, and you've got the first scrimmage on Saturday. You and I were talking a little bit earlier. Good to see things on both sides, because at times, especially in a first practice, either the offense dominates, the defense dominates. Both did at times, but when you've got both of them succeeding in the same scrimmage, I think that's kind of what you're looking for this early in preseason.
And it was really similar to what we've talked about each of the last 2 weeks, where in practices it seems that defense has gotten off to good starts, but offense has closed. Yeah. First 5 offensive drives, because these were a lot of situational scenarios where you're inside your own 5, you're at your 25, 35, 45, go red zone, goal line. So you're not getting full drives, but in the first 5 times the offense had the football, defense put the clamps down. Then the offense had a stretch where they scored touchdowns 5 out of 6 situations. Only 1 turnover. Dylan Springer recovered a fumble late. A few penalties on either side. There were some drop passes, but the way that I looked at it, the number of drop passes that happened Saturday was the same as last year, but the team is now throwing it twice as much. So I think in a way you take that as a win, but also the touchdowns that were being scored were by a lot of young guys. TJ Lewis, the Louisville transfer, who was a quarterback nearby at Glenn Academy. Marcus Sanders is somebody that we've raved about at wide receiver from Montezuma and Macon County. He busted one for 54 up the far sideline. You had a beautiful reception for Derwin Burgess on a fade route in the back corner. O.J. Arnold, remember he's O.J., not Amari anymore, so we don't get Omari and Amari confused. But from Brooks County, he scored on a touchdown run in red zone period. Teron Dixon, former walk-on, scored in red zone period. So both teams were able to show what they can do. And for the fans, number one, those that donate to the Eric Russell Fund got the behind-the-scenes tour of the FOC. For some, that was the first time they'd ever been in there.
Yeah.
Adrian Peterson, Tracy Ham, taking them through, showing some of the upgrades and what some of the things are going to look like going into the opening kickoff. And then some of the renovations that have taken place actually at Paulson Stadium with the installation of the mesh seats on the middle of the home side in Section D up in the Eagle Club, and then those on the top two sections on the other side with the drink railing. That's going to be installed sometime within the next week to two before the opening kick against Morgan State. But that's just a couple of even more things that are coming before we get to opening kickoff. But it was nice to be able to unveil 3 new schemes, what they've learned since spring practice, but also a gradually changing Paulson Stadium.
And we talked about it last week when we were diving into the offense. We'll dive into the defense a little bit later in this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation. But that it's not a complete air raid. It's not completely going away from the run. And you look at it in the scoring of, and I know it's a scrimmage and you've got 1s and 2s and 3s and all these different squads, but you had 6 scores, 3 were rushes, 3 were passes. That's kind of what you're looking for, isn't it?
Basically what Brian Ellis has been saying since day one.
Yeah. You've got Michael Lance connecting on 3 out of 4 field goals, 1 from 52, and then Anthony Beck just doing what Beck does.
He only punted 3 times, but to be honest with you, that's all he needed to do.
I was about to say, I'm fine with that.
He held on field goals, which he has been able to do the last couple of years, but the thing that Clay Helton has been insistent on with his special teamers, not all of them kick every day, because what you would call for a pitch count, it's basically a rep count with those guys, not wanting to wear them out because there's more than enough experience, but each of them have their own days of the week, and then in a scrimmage situation, they'll get a chance to show what they can do.
By the way, we talk about the Donors Weekend and how well it went off, and we talk a lot about different folks, but there's a lot of people that put a lot of hard work to get Donors Weekend happen. You look at everybody in the foundation, Eric Reisner, David Cutler, Ben Rodriguez, Stephanie Roberts, a lot of folks that put a lot of work into getting that weekend ready for different folks.
And even with Friday night having to change venues, going from outside to inside, taking away a home run derby, but for operations staff with Jonathan Gorby and Nick Skoll to be able to put the stage up in short notice, be able to get Blue Mile Catering to change its destination, and be able to keep people happy and enthused despite such a unique event being planned. And I think the home run derby was going to be a hit. But either way, it was something that people can enjoy. We just were able to appeal to Eagle Nation in a different way, and hopefully they could take something from the stories and still think about how they can positively support that program going forward.
We continue our 2022 season preview for Georgia Southern football, and we dive into the defensive side of the ball, and it's one that everybody talks about the changes in the offense. There's a good amount of change on defense as well. You look at kind of the scheme, and you got to see it this past weekend. Yeah. There are changes. It's not anything that's a wholesale drastic. I mean, you're going to see probably more 5 DBs in the mix of everything, but if that's the biggest thing that changes, I think you're pretty good with it.
And from a window dressing standpoint, there's going to be a lot of things that look similar to what Eagle Nation has seen for the last number of years. It's just about different personnel groupings. And you mentioned with 5 defensive backs, that's the natural nickel. We've seen Tyler Bride step in as the number 1 there, but the Ole Miss transfer Jalen Denton can be the number 1 nickel. He's also been the number 1 dime guy. A lot of situations with 6 defensive backs, which means that in some cases you're only having 1 linebacker. And somebody I will say that I've been really, really happy to see have a very strong camp. Finally, Todd Bradley Glenn.
Yes.
He has had a whale of a camp. I think he's in the best shape of his career. Getting one more opportunity. Let's hope that all of what has happened to him is finally out of the way. He has shown time and time again that he can defeat whatever adversity is in front of him. It is time for that guy to have a full season so he can show himself, this team, and the Sun Belt Conference what number 1 can really do.
We kind of go position group by position group. You look at the defensive line, and a lot of the same names across the front. Justin Ellis, Parker Devine, Dylan Springer, everybody knows. But you add in a guy like Christian Varner transferring in from North Carolina. He's had to battle injuries a little bit in the camp, but has been back the last couple of days, and that's a pretty stout front 4 if you're Georgia Southern.
This was something we talked about with Rip Rowan earlier last week. When you're a first-year coach, but your starting defensive ends are sixth-year guys, and one of them happens to be Dylan Springer, maybe our favorite player that we have ever covered in any sport. No, Justin Ellis, no slouch as well. I think he's going to have a chance to get on some NFL draft boards if he has the kind of season that he's being groomed to. You can't buy that kind of experience. You can't simply say, all those snaps on this side, all those snaps on this side, and I'm going to get a nearly 300-pounder that went to Hiram High School to be in the middle of this defense. Now, sometimes he's going to be that hole plugger, that fire plug, if you will, if they're going to go three-man front, because they will be multiple with 3 and 4, but he's going to get a chance to team up on the inside with Trayvon Locke at Benedictine. He's been on the roster for a couple of years. Looks like he may be poised to break out. It's somebody that's gotten a lot of time lately is LJ McLeod.
Yeah.
So I would expect him to be heavily involved as we get into the opening stages of the season.
And that's something, you look at the quote-unquote twos in this defensive line, and Georgia Southern has seen it for years, where you're constantly trying to cycle defensive linemen in, especially with teams that want to go as fast as different teams in the Sun Belt do. You look at a guy like Quinn Williams. You mentioned Locke, McLeod, Isaac Walker, guys that have been in this program for a number of years. Now it's time for them to take that next step and really get into the mix.
I'll spend a moment on Quinn because he's somebody that, remember, was at one point the highest recruit ever in the Sun Belt Conference going into the 2018 season. It feels like that this is by far going to be his best year. He's up to 270 pounds. He could still play that outside linebacker if need be, but it seems like he's been in more of that rush capacity. Some different terminology with the guys that are going to be able to rush on the edges with the verbiage that Rip Rowan has used. Sometimes he'll drop back, sometimes he will be rushing, but he looks as impressive as he has since he got on campus. Remember, he had the acrobatic pick six against Arkansas State a year ago, and we've seen what he can do in spurts. The Minnesota game, the Appalachian State game. It feels like he's going to be able to put that together this year with the new scheme, and I'm really excited to watch him.
Linebacker-wise, it was probably, I don't want to say the most turnover, because you've got Todd Bradley Glenn, Kadri Jackson that you've seen the last year or so in this program. Todd Bradley Glenn for the last, what seems like 27 years.
And he has one more year if he wants it. He has another year. He could be an eighth-year guy if he wants it.
That's crazy. Somebody called Grant Weatherford. But you have those guys. You had a number of different linebackers leave, but a guy like Jalen Jackson, Marquez Watson Trent is somebody that we've heard about the last few years, but being able to finally get in the mix, you've heard me say this a lot. I'm a big fan of Jalen Jackson. He is somebody that if you're going up the middle, you don't want him to be the one meeting you. But I think he's the guy that is going to be flying under the radar. No pun intended, but flying under the radar, and is going to have a really big year for this team.
And he's somebody that's changed positions. They tried him at defensive end, but now he looks like he's working at an inside linebacker and will be up front. That's the position that probably has the least amount of depth on the defense. Those two inside backers, you've got a new position coach at Aaron Schwans, who worked with Rowan and Will Harris at Washington. We already mentioned about Todd. With Watson Trent, we only really have seen him for 3.5 quarters defensively. He was a special team of the year before, tore the ACL against Gardner-Webb. He's back. He has had a really good camp. He's been filtered in with the ones a little bit, but predominantly with the twos. In the case of Todd and Kadri, though, you've got guys that either missed all of last year or missed significant time. Kadri had that knee injury that cost him 5 games last year.
Yeah.
He's been a pleasant surprise. With Jalen, though, going from a rush linebacker to a defensive end to now somebody that looks like he's going to work in the middle of that defense, make sure that guys are in the right spot. I would say that he's another one that's due for a big step forward. Somebody that's been involved since day one because he played a lot as a freshman, but I think that he gets significant steps and he's going to see his stats really increase.
A group that was kind of the focus, and Coach Helton has talked about it a lot, that was going to be the big key of getting more depth into it, was the defensive backs. And we talked about it, especially when you're trying to go more 5, more 6 DBs this year. You know you're getting Derek Canteen back, which you and I have talked a lot. I think this is going to be a gigantic year for Derek Canteen. You know what you've got in Justin Birdsong and Anthony Wilson. Tyler Bride, you mentioned being more of that nickel back for Georgia Southern. A guy like Seth Robertson came on towards the end of last year when he needed to, when a couple of injuries forced him into the scheme. But you've got a number of transfers in this group as well that can come in and make an immediate impact. You talked about Jalen Denton coming in from Ole Miss. You've got Wingard coming in from Elon. A number of different guys that can have a really big impact. And again, another group that you need depth in, especially in this league.
And somebody that's worked his way to the top of the depth chart at safety is the Fresno State transfer in Waylon Free. Now, he is a sixth-year senior. He was part of 2 double-digit win seasons at Fresno State, one for Jeff Tedford, last year for Kalen DeBoer. But the numbers went down a little bit. His stats decreased. He had a great first couple of years, but now after kind of splitting those reps with Justin Birdsong at safety, it looks like you could pencil him in at the moment as that safety alongside Anthony Wilson. He's flexible enough that he could play the nickel, could play the dime, and something that Coach Harris has done with a number of these DBs, they're getting cross-trained. So if they have to step in at corner, it's not something they're going to do a lot of, but a rep here, a rep there, learning different positions so that you can rotate guys. And if you would see Tyler Bride starting a nickel, don't be shocked if he would bump back to safety.
Yeah.
The Darryl Baker Jr. philosophy where you could just play everywhere and not miss a beat. This is a scheme where these guys can learn responsibilities and they're not going to be bogged down by trying to understand how exotic these coverages are. So it's a scheme that's easily understandable, and when you've got a bunch of guys, especially a number of transfers that are trying to learn where they need to be, that's the way to approach this. And for somebody like Harris, who's a first-time D coordinator, got to make sure he's in line as well.
The thing that I like about these transfers as well, you mentioned Free being a sixth-year guy. You've got a lot of experience, not necessarily at Georgia Southern in this DB room, but a lot of collegiate experience in this room, and that's only going to benefit some of the younger guys that you've also got in this room, like a Tyrell Davis, a Quincy Bonner, who have been a part of this program, but now learning from a couple of new folks.
And something that I've really noticed about this secondary, this is going to sound kind of silly, this might be the tallest secondary that Georgia Southern has had, because most of the time you're dealing with 5'9", 5'10". Every now and then you get a 5'11" guy. I thought back to a couple of years, Nick Wright, the quarterback, was 6 feet, and I couldn't think of anybody that was that tall playing defensive back, but Waylon Free is 6'2", Quincy Bonner is 6'2". You've got a number of 6'1", 6 feet guys, and as subtle as that sounds, maybe that earns Georgia Southern an interception or two. Maybe the extra length gets them a fumble recovery or two they didn't have. And I say that because a year ago, Georgia Southern only forced 9 turnovers.
Yeah.
That was the lowest number they forced in program history. And that was a year after they led the country in forcing turnovers. So something as simple and as subtle as that, if you look at turnover margin by the end of the year and say, well, last year it was -8, this year it's plus whatever. Maybe it's something like that that can help the difference. And, of course, understanding scheming and pressure on the quarterback and being in the right spot, of course. But something is having those couple of extra inches height-wise, you never know how that's going to be able to assist you for teams that are going to throw the football.
You talked about a couple of your conversations that you were able to have. We've mentioned it a couple of times. Being able to talk to the new leader for this defense in one of the summer sit-downs in Will Harris. You talked to Rip Rowan last week as part of your getting to know segment. What's the feel that you get talking to these guys that are leading this defense of what it's supposed to look like?
There is a hunger to get it right. And for all the newness, outside of Kevin Woodley, none of these coaches have been here.
Yeah.
But it's the idea that they have seen it. A lot of them have seen how this is done at the highest level, the Power 5 level, the national championship caliber level. And it is a snapshot of what is happening all around us, not just with football, but across all of athletics. On the field, these guys are going and getting it, and you would never know that 12 months ago this team was 3-9.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know that because they are attacking every day. They are playing like a team that is motivated, but they're playing like a team that is bought in. And I know that you need to see a team on the other sideline that doesn't know your plays and doesn't know your tendencies to truly see how they're going to attack. Maybe Morgan State isn't the best way to start that, but the schedule is the schedule. On another hand, maybe that's exactly what you need to start a season.
Yeah.
But whatever is in front of this team, know that the mentality and the way that they have gone about it, it seems that, and I think we talked about this last week, whether it's talking with Rip, whether it's been talking with Will or Brian or Turner, any of these coaches, the mentality seems to be there.
Yeah.
It's just when the lights go on September the 3rd, if they can make the transfer from practice to live game.
And the thing that I've really noticed, especially at practice and especially in the live periods and team periods, you see a confidence from this team that I don't know that you've seen the last couple of years. Even the years where some of the wins were there, there's a different confidence, and there's a big difference between confidence and cockiness. And a lot of people know how I feel about the latter. But there's a confidence about this group, and we talked about it last week, how the offense scored 2 touchdowns at the end. One got called back by Coach Helton, and the offense wasn't happy about it, and the offense just flooded onto the field twice. But earlier we talked about how the defense was singing, they were swaying together, but that's what you've got to have at this stage in preseason, and you've seen that really from the word go.
We just talked about with the coaches, they know what success looks like because they know what it takes to do it at the highest level. With these players, the transfers that have been brought in, they've won. Waylon Free, 2 double-digit win seasons at Fresno. Jalen Denton, they just won 10 games at Ole Miss last year. For all the flack that Lane Kiffin seems to take nationally, he knows how to call an offense. He was great at FAU, but Ole Miss just won 10 games last year with Matt Corral. I know that he is gone, and what they do isn't necessarily important to this conversation. But for the freshmen that have been brought in, you want freshmen that have been a part of winning programs, state championship programs. O.J. Arnold ran for more than 300 yards in that state title game last year for Brooks County. Yeah. Under-recruited because it's Class A. Georgia Southern probably found one of the many diamonds in the rough because they went to all 159 counties in this state to find someone like that. Kevin Whitley was huge in helping him get to Georgia Southern. And then for the guys that are veterans on this roster, they were here in 2018 potentially for a 10-win season, for a bowl victory. They were here for a bowl appearance in 19. They were here for a bowl appearance in 20. Yes, there have been some failures and some shortcomings on the field, but a lot of the guys that suit up have seen success. Yeah. So even if there are momentary lapses, if there's a drop ball, if there's a turnover, so many guys out there know what success looks like, and they know it's just a matter of time. If they do the right things, they're going to see it. They're going to see the fruits of all that labor.
That wraps up our season preview of what the 2022 Eagles will look like on the defensive side. We'll talk about special teams next week. We may have to bring in a special teams expert to...
Do we know anyone?
I think we could find one. Tim Foley might be available.
I don't. Maybe Pat Parker. Thank you, Pat.
We'll get Hop. But one final note before we wrap this one up, and we have a comment on Facebook Live.
It worries me when you say things like that.
It should.
Okay.
But coming up this Saturday, the Savannah Showcase down at Memorial Stadium. Starting at 10 will be the scrimmage, 10 to just shy of noon. Then you've got the Little Eagles Clinic at Memorial Stadium as well. That's going to be a really cool event to get down to the Savannah market and be able to practice scrimmage in front of folks down at Memorial.
And the really cool thing about that, we know that that's one of the early homes of Georgia Southern football before Paulson Stadium opened in September of 1984. It's one of those events where you get to tie past and present together. You get a chance to tap in to the Savannah market, and it's a practice that's been taking place for a number of years. Memorial Stadium is a smaller facility, but a beautiful facility. Chance for this program to showcase itself and see what they've learned. For fans that maybe didn't get a chance to make the trip for the Saturday scrimmage this past weekend, they get a chance to see it themselves this weekend. And as a bonus, the Little Eagles Clinic, because we got to make sure the next generation is ready to go here in the next few years. But Coach Helton, and they are going to treat this like a road game, which is going to be a cool thing, because the first time you go on the road, you probably don't want that feeling to be going to Nebraska.
Yeah.
I know that that's a team that's lost. They've had 5 straight losing seasons, but maybe getting into the road mindset now to properly train yourself instead of making it inside the Sea of Red in front of about 90,000 people. I'm just saying.
All right, I'm going to give you an option here.
Yeah, you snickered, so I'm even more worried about this.
We got a response from Frank Zolkowski on the pie debacle. Or our buddy Josh Ross has a Chad Willis dad joke.
Josh, hope you're feeling better, by the way.
Which one do you want first?
Dealer's choice.
All right. Frank Zolkowski. I had asked him earlier on in the podcast.
You're giddy about this, so I already know what he's going to say.
Oh, yeah. But he has a very good...
Okay.
explanation, we'll call it.
Okay.
I just sent him a simple question. Are chocolate pies a pie? I didn't use quite as good grammar when I was trying to type it fast, but he got the idea. He responded, indeed. So they are pies, coming from the expert Frank Solkowski. He says, and then later, and this is like 30 minutes in between each other.
So he put some thought into this.
He did.
Okay.
He said, of course, pies are divided into two categories, fruit and unfruit. So this is an unfruit pie. The big guy has spoken.
Fruit and unfruit.
Fruit and unfruit.
He might need to go into greater detail in 19 days.
What more detail do you want? It's a pie.
What's the dad joke?
Our buddy Josh Ross says, a dad joke for you. Who is the roundest knight at King Arthur's table? Circumference.
Waka, waka, waka.
That's especially for you, Chad Willis.
Hope he's watching.
I do too. We'll find out in about 3 minutes. But that's your dad joke. That's your pie.
So make sure you consider that in your future pastry purchases. Is it fruit or is it unfruit? Big guy says so. That's just him, Frank.
You can't argue with Frank.
Nah, I wouldn't dare.
Can't argue with Frank.
We'll ask our special teams person next week. What do you think?
We'll have to get Russ's opinion too, but I think Russ is still on air in the mid-state on the super stations. But we'll have to get Russ's take on this too, because if Russ and Frank, Russ is the voice of reason in our crew, because we need one. Lord knows we need one sometimes. Russ is the voice of reason.
Yeah.
So if Russ says it, will that convince you?
No. I will value the opinion, but I stand by.
Frank and Russ both say it. You're still not biting.
No, I'm not biting that pie.
Daryl Lynn even said it.
I understand that.
Wow.
That doesn't mean that you're wrong. I just don't believe that I'm not wrong.
Well, wait a minute. You got to believe one of us is wrong.
Not necessarily.
But it contradicts each other.
No, not necessarily. Because you can have your opinion.
Uh-huh.
Y'all can have your opinion, and I can have mine. No one's really right. No one's really wrong. See,
wait a minute.
Me saying that a chocolate pie is not a pie doesn't mean that you're wrong. It's just my way of disagreeing.
But I'm saying it is a pie.
But that doesn't mean you're wrong. You might not agree with me, but that doesn't mean you're wrong.
Well, one of us has to be wrong.
Not necessarily.
Why?
Got you thinking now.
Like, we could say that wall is white. If you say that wall is not white, you're wrong.
It might be off-white. It might be beige. It might be tan. It might be khaki. You don't know.
What? No. It's white. Anyway. This is what happens on the road trip.
You put us in a small rectangular box for hours at a time on Saturdays. This is the result. September 3rd. Can't wait.
How true that statement is.
Hail Southern.
That'll wrap up this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation. Again, you can get all your questions and comments to us throughout the week. You can tweet us at GS Sports Network or email us GSSN Booth, Georgia Southern Sports Network Booth at gmail.com. Darylyn says if we keep talking about pies, you're going to need to bring one home. So that's our cue to wrap it up.
Okay.
That wraps up this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation. Same time, same place next week. For the voice of the Eagles, Danny Reed, this is Colin Lacy saying so long, everybody.
You've been listening to Inside Eagle Nation, powered by Learfield, the official podcast of Georgia Southern Athletics.